Loved the book. I thought the book was fantastic. I know Brooke. She's a friend of mine, and I think she did a really phenomenal job of writing the book. And it certainly intrigued me, the whole idea of I had worked with Margaret Sullivan. I remembered her so vividly. You know, she was a very strong personality. And I also...
In the early hours of November 29th, 1981, the Pacific Ocean carried a secret toward the shore of Catalina Island. The water was calm, almost indifferent, as if it did not realize what it held. About 200 meters from a yacht named Splendor, the body of Natalie Wood floated silently, face down, framed by the moonlit darkness. She wore a thin nightgown, a red down jacket left unzipped, and blue wool socks still clinging to her feet. Her fingernails were broken. Bruises marked her arms and face. And yet the world was told it was a simple accident, a tragic fall, a misstep in the dark. But nothing about Natalie Wood's life or her death had ever been simple. The moment her body was pulled from the water, Hollywood began holding its breath, because this was not just the loss of a star. This was the beginning of the greatest unanswered question the film industry has ever tried to silence. Natalie Wood was not just another actress. She was America's angel, the child from Miracle on 34th Street, the trembling heart of Rebel Without a Cause, the unforgettable Maria from West Side Story. She stood among giants, Audrey Hepburn, Elizabeth Taylor, Sophia Loren, not because she was louder or more dramatic, but because she carried something rarer, vulnerability, a sadness behind the eyes that cameras could not fake. On screen, she embodied purity and longing. Off screen, she lived a life shaped by control, fear, unspoken violence, and emotional wounds no studio press release could ever clean away. To understand how Natalie Wood ended up alone in the freezing waters she had feared her entire life, we must go back, not to the yacht, but to a childhood where her destiny was chosen before she could speak. Natalie Wood was born Natasha Nikolaevna Gurdin on July 20th, 1938, in San Francisco, to Russian immigrant parents whose marriage was already cracking under pressure. Her father, Nikolai, was gentle but emotionally fragile, a man overwhelmed by financial instability and personal disappointment. Her mother, Maria, was the opposite, fierce, domineering, and relentless. Maria believed her daughter was destined for fame long before Natalie understood what fame even meant. In that household, love was conditional, approval was earned through performance. From the time Natalie could walk, she was pushed into auditions, rehearsals, and studio lights. Childhood was not something she was allowed to experience. It was something she was forced to sacrifice. At just 4 years old, Natalie stepped onto a film set. While other children played in dirt and learned nursery rhymes, she learned marks, cues, and how not to cry when adults shouted directions. No one asked her what she wanted. Acting was not a dream, it was an obligation. And with every role, the distance between Natalie and a normal childhood grew wider. The pressure was constant, mistakes were punished, exhaustion was ignored. Her mother stood behind every camera, watching, correcting, demanding perfection. Natalie learned very early that love came only when she performed well. Silence became her shield, obedience became survival. Then came the moment that would haunt her for the rest of her life. In 1949, during the filming of The Green Promise, a stunt went horribly wrong. A wooden bridge collapsed too violently, throwing 10-year-old Natalie into a rushing stream. The water swallowed her. She panicked, she screamed, she nearly drowned while cameras continued rolling. Her mother urged the director not to cut, praising how real it looked. That day, water became terror, darkness became threat. Natalie never forgot the feeling of being helpless, unheard, and trapped beneath the surface. Years later, when her body would be found floating in the ocean, that childhood trauma would return with chilling relevance. A woman terrified of water does not wander into the sea alone at night. That fact alone would later shatter the official story. Despite the trauma, Natalie's career surged forward. At 8 years old, Miracle on 34th Street turned her into a national treasure. Post-war America needed innocence, and Natalie's wide brown eyes delivered exactly that. Studios saw gold. The roles came non-stop. Films, television appearances, promotional events. Her life became a schedule, not a childhood. Behind the scenes, she had no friends her age, no privacy, no space to feel fear or confusion. She learned to smile through pain, to obey authority without question, to bury discomfort beneath professionalism. These were survival skills that would later cost her everything. As Natalie entered adolescence, the industry no longer saw her as a child. It saw her as something far more dangerous, vulnerable. At 16, she auditioned for Rebel Without a Cause. Director Nicholas Ray immediately recognized her fragility, her need for approval, her emotional openness. What followed was not mentorship. According to multiple accounts, it was an inappropriate relationship that began at the Chateau Marmont. In Hollywood at the time, such behavior was normalized. For Natalie, it was another boundary crossed without her consent, another adult taking advantage of her silence. Around the same time, a night of drinking with Dennis Hopper ended in a car crash. Natalie was injured. When a doctor called her a juvenile delinquent, Nicholas Ray saw the exact pain he needed for the role of Judy. A few days later, Natalie was cast. Her performance earned an Oscar nomination. The world applauded. No one asked what it had cost her. But the darkest trauma of her youth remained hidden for decades. According to later revelations by her sister Lana Wood, Natalie was raped at 16 by a powerful, married A-list actor she idolized. The assault lasted hours. She never reported it. She never fought back publicly. Her mother discouraged her from speaking, fearing career damage. Hollywood protected the man. Natalie carried the trauma alone. Years later, Lana named Kirk Douglas as the assailant in her memoir. By then, the damage had already shaped Natalie's relationships, her fears, and her desperate search for safety. From that point on, Natalie lived two lives. One was radiant, admired, applauded. The other was fractured, fearful, and deeply lonely. That fracture bled into her performances, especially in Splendor in the Grass. Under Elia Kazan's direction, Natalie was pushed into emotional territory that mirrored her own suffering. She did not act the breakdown, she lived it. The film re-established her as a serious actress, earning another Oscar nomination. Critics said she wasn't acting. They were right. Then came West Side Story. Though her singing voice was dubbed, her eyes carried the film. Maria became immortal because her longing felt real. She was no longer just a star. She was a symbol of an era. But fame did not heal her. It intensified the pressure. Warner Brothers wanted obedience. Natalie wanted autonomy. When she refused certain roles, the studio punished her with suspension. Nearly 2 years without work. Isolation, disappearance, psychological warfare disguised as business. During this period, Natalie spiraled. She overdosed on sleeping pills, then called for help at the last moment. The incident was kept quiet. Publicly, she smiled. Privately, she stood on the edge of the abyss. Even ridicule followed her. When Harvard Lampoon named her Worst Actress of the Year, Natalie showed up in person, laughing, accepting the award with grace. The world praised her humor. No one saw the pain beneath it. Love, for Natalie, was never separate from trauma. Her first marriage to Robert Wagner in 1957 looked like a fairy tale. She had idolized him since childhood. He was handsome, established, admired. But beneath the glamour, jealousy and insecurity grew. Natalie's career soared, while Wagner's slowed. Tension replaced romance. By 1962, they divorced. Rumors swirled about Warren Beatty. Natalie never confirmed them, but she burned brightly and destructively during that period, chasing feeling instead of safety. She dated Elvis Presley and fled his home after witnessing an unsettling attachment to his mother that mirrored her own childhood trauma. She entered intense, secretive relationships that offered passion but no peace. At one point, she lived with a woman known only as J.T., a relationship filled with intensity, secrecy, and emotional volatility. Natalie was not searching for labels, she was searching for relief. In 1969, she married producer Richard Gregson. Calm, steady. For a moment, life softened. She became a mother. Natasha was born. Natalie seemed at peace. But betrayal returned. Gregson was unfaithful. The marriage collapsed. Once again, Natalie stood alone, wounded and exhausted. Then, against expectations, she returned to Robert Wagner. They remarried in 1972. Another daughter, Courtney, followed. From the outside, it looked like redemption. Inside the home, jealousy returned stronger than before. Arguments escalated. According to her sister, Natalie was considering leaving again after finishing Brainstorm. She was tired, drained, afraid. Then came the weekend.